Do you have any idea what his plans were? The fact that there was a getaway car, were they trying to take you to a second location?
Oh, I think so. I think he absolutely was trying to get me into that car. And, that's when the worst things happened. As the result of being attacked when I was very young, I really wanted to kind of turn the tables, put bad guys in jail, and never have that feeling of vulnerability again.
Was being a woman in the FBI ever a really difficult experience? In the course of your work, did you ever have to take a life, and how did you deal with that? Hi there, I'm Natasha Zouves. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer served for more than 2 decades in counterintelligence, counterterrorism, gangs, and narcotics. She was also on the FBI SWAT teams in San Juan, Houston, and Dallas. But in this incredibly personal and candid conversation, she talks about the pivotal moment, the violent assault that set her on this path, and how she learned how to survive. Here's our conversation. Jennifer Coffindaffer, what a pleasure to see you.
It's so great to see you, Natasha.
And these are the questions that I've always wanted to ask you. Why don't we start with how you even began working for the FBI as a special agent? What led you there?
Well, certainly what led me there truly was a tragic event that happened in my life when I was a freshman in college. It completely changed my track. And as the result of being attacked when I was very young, I really wanted to kind of turn the tables. It made me want to study criminal justice. It made me want to get into law enforcement and put bad guys in jail and never have that feeling of vulnerability again.
I really appreciate you going there right off the bat. Can you tell me about the circumstances? I understand this was a violent assault that happened. What do you remember from it?
Yes, I was actually leaving a sorority meeting. It was late at night, about 10 o'clock. It was in Wichita, Kansas. Very, very cold time of year in January. And I was leaving, and I thought this is what's interesting is the spidey sense. Even when I was young and naive, everybody has it. And I thought I was being followed, but then there's no way, especially when I turned right and they turned left when we entered the complex. So turned right, I parked. I quickly, because it was so cold, I was in a dress. I got my books out of the back seat and started heading to a girlfriend and I were studying for a Spanish test. And right as I got on that sidewalk, I heard steps behind me. And I turned and looked, and right when when I met the eyes of him, I knew I was in trouble. I dropped my books and ran as fast as I could possibly run up about 4 stairs to this little concrete foyer entry to the apartment complex. I got the door open, but just as I opened the door, he put me in a headlock and threw me to the ground. Uh, he began the process of trying to rape me, which is really involved, to be honest. It's involves him taking his clothes off and tearing mine off. I was screaming. He hit me. I remember just staring at the doors because I could see them. There were stairs that led to a door, and I remember thinking, why isn't anybody opening that door? Um, But after a period of time, which of course seems like forever, and it was probably only minutes, both of us heard sirens, and I I remember feeling this feeling of I'm going to make it. But then he decided to try and start dragging me, and so he grabbed my feet and opened the door. And as he was pulling me down those cement stairs, I grabbed a hold of one of the railings and there was a getaway car. There was somebody else in a car waiting for him, and he was sort of looking at me, looking around because the sirens, trying to make a decision you could see. And he dropped me and he ran and got into that car. And then shortly thereafter, the police came, and so I was saved.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry that that happened, and you really honor me by going there and talking about some of those details, and they are horrifying. How do you reconcile what happened there? Do you feel that there is a version of you before that happened and a version of you afterwards? Did that completely change the trajectory of your life?
It changed the trajectory, although I think I did a pretty decent job for a lot of years, really not uh, talking about it. For
Mm,
me, I just chose to redirect any energy, I suppose, from that, but it certainly took away my naivety.
mm.
Even now, I always say I operate in yellow. If you're looking at a spectrum of white to red being in the fight, orange leading up to that fight, yellow being very aware of your surroundings, and white being how most people operate, which is on their cell phone, sort of not paying attention to their surroundings. I'm certainly was at orange for a long time, probably, and
Mm.
now I've settled in at yellow.
Even now, do you feel there's a hypervigilance that has never left you?
Yes, definitely. That combined with, I think, training in the FBI and all you see in the FBI.
Did they ever find him? Was there ever justice here?
Never any justice. It's definitely a white whale. He attacked 12. Two of us got away.
Oh my gosh.
I believe he either left the area or was incarcerated. Um, but it's something that I've talked to colleagues about as recently as the last Christmas party, and we want to go try to find him, find out what happened. So
Oh,
hope.
I hope you do. Do you have any idea what his plans were? The fact that there was a getaway car, were they trying to take you to a second location?
Oh, I think so. I think he absolutely was trying to get me into that car, and that's when the worst things happened. He never killed anyone, though. Uh, but in hindsight, now we know that. I don't know what his plans were for me, other than to be in a place where he could, rape me without worrying about getting caught.
If you ever did track him down, do you feel like that would bring you a sense of closure?
I don't think you can ever have closure. I think you can have answers. And it would be, in a way, I think, a good thing for me to just have an understanding of how he really targeted me. Um, you know, it was an hour later that he raped a girl right after me.
Oh my gosh.
It was clear that he, that night, was going to get someone. Um, but I want to know what happened to him. I want to know all the victims in his wake. And I think it would be more important for me to talk to other victims that he had victimized.
Mm-hmm. How did you survive this? What did that look like? You mentioned that you didn't talk about it for a really long time.
Right, right after it happened, of course, there was a local news station, I think it was Cake TV, and they wanted to bring awareness. I remember I said, I don't want my name, I don't want my face. And they talked me into being behind a black curtain and not giving, I didn't give any details per se, but I described him for people because I
Mm.
did think that was important. Um, I also talked to my sorority about what happened. Obviously, I was going to a sorority sister's house, and it was actually her father was who she lived with
Mm.
that made the call.
Someone heard you screaming and called the police. That's what happened there.
Yes,
Wow.
and they were headed for me, which of course all you can do is hope because it's very confusing. It's very echoey in those old
Oh,
apartments.
for sure. For sure. And also, how many times do people not call? I'm so grateful he did. I'm so grateful that he picked up the phone and did that. How has this very personal traumatic experience impacted the way that you've dealt with all these different cases over the years?
I think it definitely makes me empathize more. I really truly, I think, feel in a way the pain that many of these victims go through because I've been in their shoes. And it's so, I think it gives me a real perspective of what they're going through.
Yeah. What changed in you that day?
Definitely what changed in me was I just can't probably explain how naive a person I am, I think, naturally speaking. Um, just, I really thought everybody was good. That everybody was kind and rose-colored glasses. And those were immediately thrown off the face. But I will say, after the immediacy, I really did do a good job of compartmentalizing,
Mhm.
sort of completely trying to really forget about it and never really thinking about it in detail. I really didn't talk about it in detail until I retired, always driven by the idea of when I retired that I wanted to uh, teach self-defense
Wow.
so that it wouldn't happen to another.
When did you decide to join the FBI and what kind of cases did you work on?
So I first made the decision I was in the actual FBI. So I was law enforcement prior to that. But I decided to join the FBI really only because I kept looking across the street from where I worked and seeing that FBI building. And quite frankly, I thought there was no way I could ever be an FBI agent. I thought I was too short. I knew they didn't take very many women. I didn't think I was smart enough. I wasn't sure if I could cut it in a way, but I wanted, I'm just going to say truly what went through my mind. I wanted to be a part of the best of the best. If I was going to have this career, I wanted it to go all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And what kind of cases still stick out in your mind as ones that you were really proud to be a part of?
You know, it's such a good question. I was blessed to work so many different and varied cases because I was in 25 years. The most, and this may surprise you, but I think the most rewarding cases in a way were working weapons of mass destruction in the counter nuclear proliferation arena out of headquarters. And I say that because I got to go on 18 missions with that because it's something no one else did. It wasn't anything that, the locals did or other, federal agencies. And being a part of that, really trying to work to get information that our country needs to uh, be apprised of spy work going on here, let's just say, because all of that information is top secret. That was so fulfilling, Natasha.
What was so fulfilling about it?
I think the fact that it was doing something on a grandiose scale, uh,
Hmm.
doing something that really affected our country. And I consider myself a very patriotic person, deep, deep. Uh, would give my blood certainly for this country. And that it felt like I was contributing at a big scale.
Mm. What was the very first day like with the FBI?
Never forget it. So I was driving from New Mexico all the way to Quantico. And that's a long drive.
That's a long drive.
And I said, I am not stopping.
Wow.
I that's I did not want to stop. I mean,
Why?
but because I could not wait to get there. I could
Mm.
not wait to get there to see what Quantico looked like, to begin this journey. It was like this burning fire from the moment I knew I was accepted and you receive your letter, which was a huge moment. And then preparing after that. I had a house, I had a dog, just preparing everything to drop everything and to leave your life and start a whole new life. I was so excited, Natasha.
What was the training like?
Oh, the training was amazing. From A to Z, the physical fitness part of it, our our lead instructor, we called him Stonehead. He was a running back at Virginia Tech, and he was hard nosed and all the boxing. I mean, we bled, we bruised. I got knocked out. It was really tough training. The firearms I absolutely loved. I was like a duck in water with firearms, just easy to shoot. And then, of course, the investigative part I just found so
Oh, yeah.
exhilarating.
How is the physicality of it for you? You mentioned that you thought you were too short to be in the FBI. How tall are you?
I'm just under 5'2".
You're just under 5'2". Okay, we'll round up to 5'2". But
Thank you.
what was that experience like going through that physical training and also just writ large being a woman in this, very male dominated traditionally agency?
Yeah, there were four females in my class.
Out of how many?
30. There were
Okay,
30.
wow. Okay.
Uh, ended up being 30. I believe we were at 32 because two of the males that run the class, they did not make it through the first week. So their bags were packed on their beds and they left within the first week,
Wow.
which,
Were you determined that that was not going to be you?
oh, there was no way that was happening to me. No
Yeah.
way. Um, I would spend hours studying if necessary, whatever it took. There just wasn't going to happen. But the phys- physical part of it, I was fortunate to be an athlete growing up, and so it came easy. But what was difficult were some of the physical pieces. So as an
Mm.
example, they divided you off at the very beginning in a group of four. Well, my group of four were a Los Angeles SWAT operator, 6'1", 185, a former hockey player and a prior agent who was about 6'4", about 220, and a Golden Gloves boxer, Dan, I better not say their name. And that was my group of four the whole time. My
Wow.
instructor was really not happy that they were taking it sort of easy, right? A
Mm.
headgear, and they've got the boxing glove. You got to let her have it. And the LA SWAT guy was the guy that was in the ring with me, if you will, during the time. And I said, come on, it's okay. It's okay. I'm ready for you. He goes, okay, I'm coming in hot. I'm going to give you a right hook. I'm like, okay, I'm here. And I put my gloves up and he hit the glove, which hit me. And I saw birdies and I had a concussion and I was out
Oh
about,
my gosh. He concussed you with your own glove. You
yeah,
hit yourself and got a concussion. Do you remember, is there anything that you would tell yourself in the particularly difficult moments to keep yourself going?
I, you know, even getting knocked out, I enjoyed it. That sounds
Jennifer.
I mean, I really used it as a learning point. Um, I felt like, I really felt like, and I still feel like this to this day, if you're going to step in this arena, you need to step all in and not make any excuses and not worry about when things are maybe a little bit unfair. That is part of it. And I think if you have that attitude, probably in anything you do, you're going to be fine.
Mm.
So the academy was certainly an excelling situation for me.
Yeah. This wasn't a behind the desk FBI kind of job. What were the physical confrontations and things that you came up against?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was very fortunate to work drugs, gangs, organized crime, violent crime throughout my career. And that's really where I wanted to be. That was my wheelhouse in terms of interest and the kinds of crimes I like to investigate. So,
Wow.
unfortunately, when you investigate those kinds of people and have to arrest those kinds of people, you're more susceptible probably to being in bad situations.
Mm.
Probably the biggest fight was with a man. His actual name was Armando Uriarte, and he was a huge heroin dealer that was from Mexico. And we had worked this case forever. And long story short, he fled to Mexico before the arrest. Then we got word he was back, and myself and four others got put on the detail to try to arrest him. And we had lost him. We were sick about it. We'd been following him for probably 6, 7 hours. And my partner and I were the last two to leave kind of the scene where we thought we had seen him. I remember we took off our bulletproof vests that were underneath our clothing and just were in total letdown mode. Like, I can't believe we lost him after all this. And my partner says, oh my gosh, I think that's him. They're across the parking lot. I said, it's him. And I took off like a cannon and ran, jumped on top of him, put him in a headlock, tackled him. Then my partner got to us, and the fight was on because it's very difficult, no matter how bad, even if 2-on-1, and we do this exercise called the fugitive crawl in Quantico, where two take on one, and you realize it's how difficult it is. And so we're in this big battle and big fight, and I finally got a handcuff on one of his arms, and I dislocated almost his arm. I mean, I pulled it clear up above his head, and finally got pain compliance. And he had a locked and loaded 45 in his waistband. So
Oh my gosh.
just in the nick of time.
Were you aware that he had a firearm on him at the time? I mean, or were you just assuming that he probably did even when you tackled him?
You always assume, especially with this guy, he never didn't. But I have to tell you, and it should have crossed my mind. It really didn't cross my mind. Crossed my mind is I got to get this guy in custody.
Mm. Is that the most dangerous situation you've ever been in?
Probably not. Another situation where I had to do an arrest, an attic arrest, and I was the only one there. The SWAT team were below me, holding my feet, because it was a very small crevice to get in, to the attic, and there was somebody laying below the insulation, and I couldn't tell. That happens a lot. And then you scream FBI and nobody moves and you realize it's just insulation. But this was the time that somebody was there. And they came up and they had something in their hand. It was very difficult to see. I told them to drop it. They didn't drop it. This is all happening within seconds,
Mm.
just boom, boom. And then my SWAT team leader said, say it in Spanish. I said it in Spanish. And he dropped what was in his hand. It was actually a female. She dropped what was in her hand. I got her down, went back and looked, and it was a cell phone.
Ah.
And I was so grateful for that tactical moment that I did not take a life of somebody who wasn't.
In the course of your work, did you ever have to take a life, and how did you deal with that?
No, I've never had to take a life. Each situation that I've ever had where I probably would have been justified to, for whatever reason, uh, I didn't, and the situation, we got it under control, and I'm grateful that I don't have to live with the thought of taking a life because I have many partners and friends, some of my closest SWAT associates that I'm still friends with to this day
Yeah.
that have taken a life, and it forever bothers them.
Mhm. How have you absorbed so much mental and emotional darkness over the years? All of the crime scenes, all of the perpetrators, all of the things you've seen in person, the photographs, the video that you've poured over. How have you held all of that and not allowed it to damage you psychically?
I tell you, it's putting it in a closet. You really have to compartmentalize. And when I was first an agent, and some of the first things you see are so difficult, and you take it home with you, and it bothers you. And I remember about at the 10-year mark in law enforcement, where I was actually able to completely compartmentalize, seeing horrific um, treatment of children, which has always been the most difficult, and go home and somehow it wasn't there anymore.
Hmm.
And then
What
getting
what
back,
what changed?
I think finally figuring out how to do it,
Hmm.
finally figuring out how mentally put it over there in a corner, and you have to change personalities too. You cannot when you're at home with little 3-year-old and 4-year-old be like that.
Hmm.
You have to be kind and sweet and loving and tender, and then going back on the streets and dealing with these knuckleheads, and then you're, you know, a hard ass.
Mhm. What are you proudest of through those more than 2 decades?
Hmm. Never thought of that question. This is going to sound odd, but there's been a couple of situations too that I can think of very specifically of bad guys that I arrested, that became cooperative later. And these two particular people in specificity, and I got up on the stand at their sentencings and really pleaded with the judge for leniency.
Hmm.
Both of those individuals, and they hadn't killed anybody, these were narcotic offenses, big scale, but nevertheless. Uh, both of them contacted me after they got out. One was 7 years later, and one was about 5 years later, and just thanked me
Wow.
so much for giving their life back and live productive lives. They were married, they had jobs, they just needed that chance. And I was glad, that I recognized that and that they got a chance.
Wow. That's an incredible thing. You've seen some of the darkest underbellies of this country. Narcotics just being one area. What do you think most Americans don't understand about some of the worlds that you've inhabited here, whether it is criminal enterprises, gangs, narcotics, etc.?
Gangs. I don't think people understand. I worked gangs for 6 years with the gang unit. I was detailed off to the PD where it was every day in and day out. I worked the night shift, I worked the day shift, worked with the detectives as well. I don't think people really understand the monsters that are created mostly because of how they were brought up. Um, they're monsters. They don't care about you. Uh, One case, they, part of an initiation, would lay out from underneath a car, grab your ankle, slit your Achilles tendon so you could not walk, and attack you, whether that was rob you, beat you, sexually assault you. Um, they absolutely do not care. There is no humanity left in them. It's been stripped of them because of the lives they've lived.
What do you want every woman, especially, to know? What is some of the acquired knowledge that you could share very quickly about most of us who are blithely out here trying to live our lives?
I think the biggest thing I could say is to really be aware of your surroundings.
Mm.
I could just give one clue is don't be on your cell phone when you walk to that car. Have somebody walk out with you and you're walking to a vehicle or otherwise have to be outside. Just don't be alone in situations.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that you never talked about the very personal origins, the very personal story that gave you so much insight into what survivors go through, that really, in some ways, propelled you on this path. That you didn't talk about it for a really long time. What was the turning point? When did you finally decide to start talking about it, and why?
I started talking about it because when I retired, I wanted to have a company that would train people in terms of how to understand being safe, kind of those tips. Just a couple of the tips, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have classes for college, people attending college and high school, and try to make sure at least the people I taught were never attacked. And I realized that it's fine for people to go out and teach, but to share my personal story
Mm-hmm.
would be important.
What was that feeling like when you finally shared it?
Oh, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Wasn't I still I will talk about it because I know it's a good thing to do to share to help others, but I don't maybe because I internalize it. I mean, I feel like I'm almost back in those footsteps again,
Mm,
and it's a
mm.
feeling. So I don't really, it's not freeing or anything like that for me. But I don't mind because I think it's good for people to understand and hopefully learn from my mistake.
Mm. And I don't even know if it's learned from your mistake, but I mean, I just walk away from that story with such a sense of resilience and purpose from what happened. A terrible, evil thing crossed your path that day. And look at the number of people you've helped and the number of people you continue to help. And even though, all these years later, it is still triggering and it's still right there, your willingness to even share that story, to let other women know, you are not alone and I understand and you will survive this, is an incredible thing. You don't need to hear it from me, but it's an incredible thing.
Thank you.
I know Tracy Walder mentioned to me when she transitioned from the CIA to the FBI that it was a culture shock. And it was really, really hard. She's been open about sexual harassment, she says, that she endured personally at the FBI. Was being a woman in the FBI ever a really difficult experience?
Yes, I experience sexual comments and, statements that shouldn't be said. I was on 15 years on three different SWAT teams and in the FBI generally, but I have thick skin. I always believed that the best way to solve something wasn't really filing a suit or
Mm,
going after individuals. My belief was if you could run as fast, jump as high, shoot as well, investigate well and stand toe to toe with somebody in terms of being able to discuss casework, you could get an equal footing. Not with everybody, Natasha, certainly not with everybody. But for the most part, I felt it had to be an absolute last resort.
Mm. Was it just comments? Was it just verbal, or did it ever cross the line into physical as well?
Eh, I mean, it depends what you think. So, as an example, I mean, there's just some part of SWAT where hit somebody on the rear, and I've done it to them. You know, that's the thing. Unless we have an organization where everyone is thought of equally.
Mm.
In other words, I can, slap a guy on the rear and SWAT, and he can slap me, and I'm not thought of as a woman. I'm thought of as a SWAT operator.
Mm.
That's the thing. But unless a woman thinks of herself as an FBI agent and not as a woman per se, I think it's really hard to get over those obstacles and boundaries of natural things that can be misconstrued or
Mm.
that men do that can be offensive.
Yeah. Do you remember what some of the things are that were said?
Oh, I remember a couple. Uh, they're really too gross. I mean, they're really gross. Men make gross comments, and they just can't help themselves sometimes. And
Mm.
do you react by saying, "Okay, I'm going to the CDC and I'm going to file something against you," or do you give it back to them and say, "Would you say that to your mother? What is wrong with you?" And you get in their face, and then they kind of say, "Oh, yeah, that probably wasn't appropriate," and then they don't do it again.
Yeah.
So that was my tact.
Do you feel like the infrastructure was there for you to be able to report something and have it not impact you negatively and have blowback on you?
No. If you made a report or you did something, everyone knew, and there was going to be a negative connotation, for sure.
Yeah. And I think what you're describing is something that so many women, even who have not had the rare distinction of being in the FBI and serving, have experienced in their lines of work. What was the most difficult part of being part of the FBI?
The hours
Mm.
to do it right. And just like I think attorneys are like this also, and especially public defenders and other jobs, maybe reporting. You have to work so many hours. And
What kind of hours are we talking about?
oh my gosh, I think the longest I ever worked was about close to 3 days.
Oh, without sleep.
Yeah, pretty much without street. You might get a cat nap in because you have a partner and you trade off and on, but and a lot of times you're just on adrenaline, especially when I was young. I'm not a big sleeper anyway. I'm an insomniac, so I don't need a lot of sleep, but certainly the hours in that takes away from your personal life if you're going to do it right. A lot of
How do you have a personal life amidst all of this?
it's tough. I mean, I was an agent for many years, 9 years before I got married, and then another 5 years before I had children. So I had a lot of years of really being a dig-in agent.
Mm. Did having children change anything for you in this career?
Oh, it really did. It definitely did. But I still kept trudging along. But I tell you, I couldn't wait to get home
Mm.
to be a mom to those kids.
How did you feel about putting yourself so directly in harm's way with a family?
I guess it's a confidence you build when you train and train and train and you fall back on your training that you really don't think you can get shot. I know
Mm.
that sounds so odd, but when you're in these situations, it's like with Armando Uriarte, you just run and you pursue and you do what you train to do.
Yeah.
Um, so I know I was in harm's way, and my husband sometimes would say, "It's time to stop," and
Yeah.
really that's why I retired from.
Yeah. I think you described yourself back when you were a student as incredibly naive. I don't know if that, after listening to your story, is the word that I would use. I think, trusting, I think having a beautiful, trusting heart is also true. What would you tell her if you could go back?
I would tell her, um, no, you know what? I think I'd keep her just the way she was.
Tell me more.
I think that that spirit of being trusting and not having to see so much evil and so much negativity, not having to feel something so painful. If you can keep a person like that for their whole life, I know it's unrealistic, but wow, it's a beautiful thing.
Jennifer Coffindaffer, thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate you.
thank you.